I don't want to miss out on a specific market. Learned real quick, F that. I'm going to say who I am trying to work with. I'm going to speak to the folks that the work is intended for. Guess what? I probably tripled my revenue for the business the moment I did that, right? Because I started speaking the language of that specific group. However, that also came with some backlash, right? And so that was one of the challenges that I did face as I was pivoting. And I started curating who my target audience was based on a racial demographic. Then I ran into the issue of when I started doing more consulting, it was like, well, your message is divisive, right? It is delineating that, Black folks need a different level of support than, other races, or that, Black folks. Exactly.
Hello, and welcome to the Bold Black Girls Podcast. I'm Aries.
And I am Kim.
And today is our special, one of our favorite segments of the whole month, which is our Bold Black Girl of the Month. Ooh. And this month we have DeAnnah Stinson Reese. She is going to share all about herself, and we are just here to amplify her story and talk through some of the things that really drew me to her when we first encountered each other. And I'm gonna let you go ahead and actually I'll tell how we met. So what is the thing called? Power to Fly is the online platform that you can go register, and they promote a lot of remote work for women. And they had this summit, diversity reboot, and this particular part of it was it called Empowering Black Women or something like that? Something around that.
Yeah.
So they had a bunch of amazing Black women coming in and speaking on different issues regarding diversity, equity, and inclusion. And she was one of the speakers. And I was like, I like her vibe. Like, it was just real down to earth. I was like, she needs to be on the Bold Black Girls Podcast, because just the way you were explaining things and talking through kind of the work that you do, I was like, yes, we need to amplify her voice so that we can share what your story is. So tell everybody about who you are. Her book is behind her. We're going to be talking about that a lot during this segment. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, and what you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. So thank both of you, first of all, for having me. It was so funny because the event that you saw me at, it was like, I think I was talking about my book, right? Like with Nicole. Yeah. So funny story. I was actually supposed to be interviewing someone else, and not so funny part of the story, her sister died. Like, I think she found out that morning or something like that. Yeah. So that's the not so funny part of the story. But they were like, oh my God, like, do you mind talking about your book? I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine, whatever. Right. And everywhere I go, whenever I'm like speaking at different forums, if my target audience specifically is women of color in any facet, like, I'm giving it to them raw, unfiltered. There's no sugarcoating at all. And that's really kind of how I came with it.
I was messaging her. I'm like in the chat. And I'm like, because I'm in the chat. The chat is hot. We all in there just talking. I hit her up on the side on LinkedIn like, hello.
Yes.
Yes, girl.
Yes. I tell folks, I don't play. I tell folks, look, I'm giving it to them raw and unfiltered. Like, you're not about to sugarcoat I'm not sugarcoating what I got to say. I'm not downplaying what I got to say. Either you're going to let me give it to them real, or you don't need me to give it to them at all. It's going to be one of the two. So it was so dope when she reached out and was like, yo, I love like your vibe. I was like, yes, let's chat. Let's talk. And so a little bit about me and what I do. I'm a career strategist. And so I work with any professional for the most part, but my target market or my target audience is Black professionals, helping them to advance in their careers. And so I've helped to date well over 1,300 Black professionals. I've actually lost count because the work has shifted from just working one-on-one to companies bringing me in to work with like their ERGs. And so ERGs can have like 900, 1,100. So like the work quickly became extremely expansive within like probably a year, not even a year, like I'll say probably like 2 years in, it became very expansive and I just lost count. But then in addition to that, I do work with companies on consulting. So I'm a global DEI strategist as well. And the reason why I don't refer to myself as a consultant, because people ask like, well, why do you say strategist versus consultant? And I always tell folks, I am all about strategy, right? Like it has to be a very tactical plan to get executed in order to achieve a specific goal. And so, and I'm all about measuring how we achieve that goal. And so for me, that's where, you know, strategy come into play because I'm looking at things from a tactical perspective versus simply telling you what to do or giving you guidance and advice on what to do. I want to make sure you understand how to do it, how we're going to measure how you did it, and if it was successful. And we got to be achieving a specific type of result, which for me is equity for Black professionals within the workplace, right? I don't care about your diversity numbers, right? You can have 100% Black folks, and if you don't have an equitable workplace culture, it's not helping us, right? You can invite us and include us in some of everything, but if I don't have equitable access to make changes or be able to influence changes with policy, to be able to be in leadership meetings and actually, in my opinion, actually makes a change or a difference within an organization, and if I'm not being compensated like my counterpart or higher, it absolutely means nothing to invite me or make me feel included, right, in a meeting. And so with companies, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I get a lot of hate messages on LinkedIn. Yes, I do. I get a lot of hate messages from folks because they don't like the message that I put out. And I'd be like, you know, that's cool. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. But just know, as long as you follow me, you gonna get this tea that I'm gonna spill for you through LinkedIn and through whatever other outlet I utilize. And so I've been fortunate to work with a lot of big name companies in certain facets. And I'll be honest, that has also kept me from working with some of those same big name companies in more larger capacities because it's kind of like getting to that nitty gritty. The minute you start talking about, you know, what is your pay, your compensation structures look like? Let's do a pay equity analysis. And, you know, what type of career development plans do you have in place specifically for your people of color? You know, all these different nuances like, oh, okay, you want to hire more, you know, Black and brown folks. What are you going to do to support them and retain them? Did you bring in a mental health professional to work with your Black employees only in light of all the social justice? You know, these questions, you know, they don't like when I ask these questions.
They don't like it
because
they don't want to do it. And they know that they're just being performative instead of actually wanting to take action. So we need to know how this came about.
I was just going to say,
like what this passion.
How did you prepare to be a strategist, career strategist in a diversity, global diversity? I can't even say it today.
Right.
But I'm like, before all of this, how did you end up here today? Because you're from the South Side.
This is her Chicago sister over here.
Shout out my town, okay? Right. So it's really interesting. Not to give like everybody my whole life story, right? Because I'm pretty sure you already hear my whole life story. But growing up on the South Side and going to college in Illinois and Southern Illinois, that was my first time experiencing any type of like racism. Like I didn't experience racism really like in Chicago. You know, I went to
HBCU
for high school, basically. So I'm like, you had all these Black teachers. School. I didn't have no Black teachers. I had one Black teacher in high school. She was my dance teacher.
Dang, for real? No, yeah. And I had Black. High school was very different than college for sure. And in Chicago, like I didn't really have any like interactions with the police or anything. Nothing like crazy. Like now males, I can't, you know, our Black males, they experience things a little bit differently in Chicago, I know. But for me, like I didn't have those type of issues. Now, when I got to Carbondale, though, because I went to school at Southern Illinois University, that's where I saw a different facet of the world, right? That's when I began to see like, oh, like folks don't want to see Black folk, like companies or entities. They don't want to see Black people in certain positions. You know, if my skin color is melanated, I am viewed as a threat. Like I got to see that in a variety of facets, not to the extreme facets that I know certain folks have seen it where, you know, maybe they've been beaten or arrested, but I've been like pulled over by a bunch of cops and had to get down and had guns pointed at me and, you know, all type of crazy stuff that it sticks with you, you know. And even working, you know, at the university, I was working for the registrar's office. I'll never forget it. And I was like in a leadership role before even graduating, right? Because I showed up and I showed up well, right, in the role that I did. And I was very fortunate. I had a Black boss. Tiffany, if you're watching, wherever you're at, I love you. I'm always shouting you out. Tiffany was the GOAT, man. She was the registrar. She was like, I saw through her how like they did not want to give her that role. She stayed being like interim for the longest. They were like trying to interview candidates. They did not want to give her that role. They finally gave her the role. And she was the Black woman. So she was over the entire registrar. So she was over a lot of folks. And it was so great because she allowed me to be in a leadership position without being a graduate student yet. And I'll never forget, I've had multiple instances where, you know, you can feel like the undertone of racism with interactions with different white folks when they come in like, is there anybody else that can, you know, handle this? Like, no, I'm the person that handles this. Thank you. Right here.
Oh, can I speak to your manager? I'm the manager.
Right here, I'm the manager. Speaking. And I was called a nigger, like ER, for the first time ever. Yes, during my time in Carbondale, because the gentleman did not like my response, which was the policy, right? And I was like, you know, asking him a slew of questions, even though he was very ignorant, still trying to ask him a slew of questions to see, like, is there any way we can help him? And sure enough, like, he was wanting to speak to my supervisor. Sir, I am the supervisor. Well, who's above you? There is no one above me. There was somebody above me. I was like, there is no one above me. Like, I already know. Like, my job is to make sure that if I'm sending something above me,
it's above me now.
If that was out at the time, that would have been priceless. But it wasn't out at the time, so I couldn't use it. At the time, I already knew, right? Tiffany was my direct report. And so I knew, like, Exactly. Like, you just gonna get another Black woman and she's gonna tell you the same thing I told you. Then she's gonna be like, DeAnnah, why did you transfer that to me? And I trust you to handle it. Right. Like, so we had those conversations. She's equipped me to be confident, right, in what I know. It was like, you ain't gotta send everybody that's mad to me. If you say no, the answer is no. Like, there's a reason why I have you in this role, right? That was the seed that was planted that kind of inadvertently fueled how I coach Black professionals to date. So he called me. Is this like a PG-13? Can I say the words that he used or no?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. He called me a nigger bitch.
Wow.
He called me a nigger bitch.
Oh, he went all the way into it.
Black nigger bitch. Yes. Like, yes. So
stuck with you.
I was like, well, sir, you know, be that as it may.
And you still was professional. Oh, yeah. I'd be like, well, let this.
Get up out of here. We still cannot process your request to remove all these F's from your transcript simply because I forgot what his reason was. It wasn't like an extenuating circumstance. And he like stormed off or whatever. And like the folks like from the other departments, like, are you okay? I was like, I'm fine. Now, granted, at the time I was like, I think I was still in shock. Like, it was kind of like this adrenaline rush. It was like, did I really just call a nigger? Like, not like, what's up, my nigga? Like, it was like nigger.
Like ER back to Jim Crow style.
Yes. So at that point, this was prior to me starting my master's program. I ended up going into a master's program. I decided I wanted to do work in higher ed around like retention and stuff for Black students, because a lot of the people that would come through our office were Black students that ultimately kind of like they jagged off maybe their first year, and now they've gotten it together, and now here they are their senior year, but they're struggling because they got these horrible grades, but maybe they had something going on at home. You know, they may have had an extenuating circumstance. So got my master's and went straight into higher ed doing retention work and working with the Black student population or minority student population in general. that is what fueled a lot of my work when it came to kind of like that coaching, right? Like coaching Black professionals, young professionals at that time into how do we show up as our best self? How do we take advantage of the work that we're doing at the college level to translate that effectively into corporate America, right?
Yes.
And so did that for a while. And then I was on the East Coast. My husband didn't like it. He was like, I hate the East Coast. He's from Alabama. So we ended up moving to Texas. And I was so anti-Texas because like moving to Delaware was cool for me because I'm like, oh, you know, it's still like, you know, you got that city vibe still because I was like by New York, by Baltimore, Philly. Like it was like I was still so close to all the hustle and bustle. I'm like, I don't want to move to Texas. And so we ended up moving to Houston because we had some college friends that was down here and he wanted to coach and all this other stuff because he played football. So we came to Texas, and when I tell y'all, it was so eye-opening because even though I was like helping folks with like career development stuff and doing like retention work, when I came to Houston, even prior to coming to Houston, I thought I had a job. Come to find out, they rescinded the offer, right? Never, ever happened to me before. They rescinded the offer. Yes, it was due to budget reasons. Like, I didn't do nothing crazy. Let me put that out there for the listeners. I didn't do nothing. She was looking like, what you do, girl?
Like, tell me more.
No. It was like something with budget issues. They ended up rescinding the offer. And so I struggled. Like, after a month probably of struggling to find a job, I was like, yo, like what the heck? So I immediately like reverted to, okay, I know I can do like college development stuff, right? So I was like, let me see if I can do something like at a high school, do some college development work until I can find something that goes back to like either retention work or maybe some learning and development stuff in corporate America, you know, stuff that's tied to the skill sets that I had. Learned very quickly how corporate America, how dicey it is when it comes to Black professionals getting in certain type of roles. The roles that I was qualified for, they didn't want me to be in. And I figured out the formula to bypass a lot of those biases. But by the time I figured it out, I didn't even want it anymore. I was like, I am going to start my own business. So I ended up getting a job teaching while I was growing my business. So I was teaching career development and growing my business simultaneously with 2 kids. So for those of y'all that are out there that are like, there's not enough time in a day, there probably isn't. However, folks find a way to make it happen. So it is very possible to make it happen. It is all about being very strategic and tactical with how you not manage your time, but how you prioritize your time. So when I tell y'all every waking moment, I was like on call. I would stay at work late, like until, let's say the daycare closes at 6:30. I'm at work until 6:20, right? Doing work for my business, doing whatever it is I can do, taking calls, coaching clients, working on my website. Then at my daughter's softball practice, I go get the kids. I pick my daughter up from the daycare because they would pick her up from her school, take her to daycare for after school program, get my son from that same daycare. We go to her softball practice at like 7:15, 7:30, from 7:30 to 8:30. What am I doing? Yes, go, Dariah. I'm like maximizing, you know what I'm saying? And then en route home or en route to this or that, you know, I'm on calls early in the morning before work. Like when I tell you, it was like it was a hustler mentality, like to say the least. And I know people say hustle culture is dangerous. It's dangerous when you don't realize when you need to take a pause, right? But in some facet, there's phases where you hit a phase and you need to be in your hustle phase. That was my hustle phase.
And you had a strategy. So that's the difference. It's one thing to just be hustle, and you don't have a plan really.
Strategy.
Yeah, you had a strategy. So when you're hustling toward a goal, like I know where I'm going with this, then it's only temporary.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it was for me. And so I literally, as I was coaching, before I started coaching individuals, first it was just resume writing, right? It was just like, oh, I write your resume, boom, 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 right? That's how it started. Then as I'm writing folks' resumes, I'm actively like applying for stuff. Came up with a formula, didn't even really think much of it, right? Use this formula. I started getting interviews for stuff. I was turning down those jobs.
Oh, wow.
I was turning down the jobs. I figured out what works and what speaks to white corporate America. And that's green money.
Yep.
Money is what speaks to white corporate America. If you can speak to the dollars, they'll listen. And in some instances, I won't say in all, because if they just don't want you in there, they just don't want you in there as a Black person, point blank, period. However, you change the game when you make a person choose between green and white, right? Now it's no longer Black versus white when you're looking at candidates. Now you're looking at, I'm turning down an opportunity for this person to come in and make us potentially millions of dollars, or save us millions of dollars, or do X, Y, and Z that contributes to our bottom line, right? I'm turning that down for John's nephew. Okay, right? That's where you make it harder for the white HR folks, right? Or even sometimes, I hate to see it, you got some of us that be up in there and we be, we be whitewashed.
This culture it's embedded in all our blood. We all were raised in these school systems and this stuff, and they have got that psychology gets in your mind. And I see it a lot as well. Like, we've talked about that a lot, where you're like, all skin folk ain't kin folk, because people be still having that same mentality as others. So it's just it's definitely a mindset that's been in our DNA.
Yeah. And unfortunately, questions for you, but I feel like you went down the list of questions that I had, right?
Yeah.
So you talked about your adversity that you faced on your journey, and it sounds like you were juggling having a full-time job, family, just making time and knowing what it is you wanted to do, and you just persisted. Anything else you want to share about any adversity that you may have faced while trying to start your business?
The adversity, starting the business, those were the pieces. I think where a lot of adversity came was when I pivoted the business. Because it started off with just the resume writing and things like that, and then it evolved to the coaching. And then for me, when I first started, I really wanted to start where it was like, I'm helping Black professionals, but I was scared to say I'm helping Black professionals, right? Because I was like, I don't want to miss out on a specific market. Learned real quick, F that. I'm going to say who I am trying to work with. I'm going to speak to the folks that the work is intended for. Guess what? I probably tripled my revenue for the business the moment I did that, right? Because I started speaking the language of that specific group. However, that also came with some backlash, right? And so that was one of the challenges that I did face as I was pivoting. And I started curating who my target audience was based on a racial demographic. Then I ran into the issue of, when I started doing more consulting, it was like, well, your message is divisive, right? It is delineating that, Black folks need a different level of support than, other races, or that, Black folks. Exactly. And that was when I became comfortable with simply saying, yeah, that's right. Like, that's what it is. It was like so freeing. And at that point, it was kind of like anybody can get it. I want to say it had to have happened right before the plight of the social justice movement after George Floyd's death. And it's evident through my LinkedIn, like at the top of that year, things really started to shift, even with the messaging on my LinkedIn, the type of posts I was putting out, and things like, I stopped caring. It was like, F that, I don't care.
LinkedIn is a place, and I think we've all experienced that at a certain level. Like, even when we started Bold Black Girls, this was 2019.
Yes.
And it was crazy because I was coming out of a toxic work environment myself. I had been seeing it. I had been hearing the stories from other Black women saying what they were going through. And I'm like, this is an epidemic.
And I
Like,
was in a
it's
toxic one and
issues.
didn't really kind of realize it.
And I told her, so like when we came up with Bold Black Girls, it was like when people would say, like, what's the name of your podcast?
I know, Bold Black Girls. And I would say it fast, Bold Black Girls. BBG.
You're like realizing, like, but we wanted it specifically for Black women, you know, like, because even women of color, that's a different bucket. It's not the same, right? So it's like, if we're talking about Black women, we're talking about Black women. Like, yes, we love everybody and no, we're not divisive. We got a lot of white women, a lot of people who are not Black who listen to our podcast, and that's welcome. And we want them to, because they can learn something. Right. But at the same time, this is for Black women, and to be able to feel confident in just saying that was a journey. Like, that is a journey. I think when you mentioned that at the summit, I was really like, I connected with that, because I'm like, yeah. And now you see a different LinkedIn even than what we saw, like from all that stuff. It really opened it up. Now people are like, oh, I want to feature your podcast on this. And oh, I love the name Bold Black Girls. Like, because it's cool now to talk about Black women and be for Black people and stuff like that. You get a little check on your name when you're an ally, you know, or whatever, right? And so I feel you on that, like, totally.
And that had to be your bold defining moment, which was one of my questions.
Yes.
Like, what was your bold defining moment? But it sounds like that was it.
That was it. Yep. The moment I pivoted, and I actually rebranded my business. It used to be Next Level Writing Services. And the minute I decided I'm going to put it out there, I'm helping Black people, right? I changed the entire name of the business, rebranded it to be E3 Professional Services. And the E3 stands for Educate, Equip, and Empower. And it's for advancing Black professionals in their careers.
I love it.
Love it. Those are like my favorite E's. So when I was actually going to get into this, like, tell us about the E3 and how you came up with it. In terms
I'll read your mind, girl. That's that Chicago thing.
I know. This is amazing.
Which is a part of our core values of the podcast. So, you know,
Black women.
Our whole thing is building a community, organizing these safe spaces for courageous conversations, learning together, and development. So that's personal, professional, spiritual development, just like making sure that we are equipping, you know, with whatever we learn, like how you did with this book.
Which we're going to get into this.
Yes.
We need to start talking
Let's talk about this, because I told you that I'm like, okay, you've inspired me already. Let me just, you've empowered me already on something that we were talking about another time. But I like how easy it is. It's really a quick read. It is something that you could be like, let me get my mind right and read it like in a little bit. It don't take that long to read through it, but you just give some great high level points for us to think about. And we were talking about how we finally got to the understanding of what's in the playbook, but it took a lot of trial and error and failure and years, you know? And so for anyone who is trying to figure this out and wants to figure it out early, like, this is a good starting point to just start, because it's really a starting point, and then you got to do some of that work to expand on it. Right. So talk a little bit about, like, what made you put this in playbook form.
And before you start, I love the title Thriving in Black, because I think a lot of us were just surviving.
Yes.
We were not, and some of us are not.
Yes.
Thriving. Yeah. So I love the title about the book. So I'll let you go from there, but I just wanted to bring it up.
Yes.
No, you took the words out of my mouth. We need to get out each other's head, okay? Because I was literally going to start with, you know, that was part of the motivation to write it was the fact that the concepts, or the plays, if you would, that I highlight in the book are the same ones that were synonymous across, like, so many clients, Black clients, where they felt like they hit this plateau. A lot of them were like mid-year professionals. So they was like literally in that like 10 to 12 year range or higher in their careers. And they felt stuck. They felt like, I am just surviving. Like, the phrase surviving was something that was frequently coming up in various coaching calls from different women that did not know each other. It's like, I'm barely surviving. Like I have to leave. I have to get out this situation, or I'm like I'm not gonna make it. Like I feel like I'm not gonna survive here. Like as it pertained to whatever company that they were working for or whatever career field that they were in, and it was kind of like, okay, here's the steps, the tactical plan, the strategy to get you out of this particular situation you're in into the next. And it was kind of like the same thing over and over and over. And so it was like, okay, why not make a book out of it, right? Like, yes, and the book, these steps is to move you out of surviving into thriving. And it's to do it in specifically predominantly white spaces. How do you set yourself up to advance in your career when you are in a predominantly white space, whether that's education, higher ed, or K through 12 education, higher ed, corporate America, like the nonprofit sector, the government sector, right? Like, how do you set yourself up and position yourself to thrive in a space that's not designed for you to thrive, right? And so that was the mindset behind why I created Thriving and Black. Then after I had like the manuscript done, it was kind of like, who gonna read all this? Because it's like, I don't want to read all this. I wrote it. I was like, I don't want to read all this. So then it was like, a playbook is tactical steps. Like it's do this, do that, do this, do that. After you do this, this is going to happen. And then this is going to happen. So cut out all the fluff. Mm-hmm. It was like all the stuff that don't matter. Nobody needs to hear my life story. Nobody needs to hear why the problem exists. It's no, here's the problem. We do X, Y, and Z, right? Here's the solution. We need to do A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. Here's how you achieve the solution. LMNOP, right? Like, that's literally how I structured it. And it was like, I wanted it to be something to where for young professionals, it's for any, let me take a step back. For anybody, whether they're young, mid, senior, executive, I want it to be an easy read, because what I do know is we are in a generation of immediate gratification. Yep. We move too fast. Y'all, I got books that like...
Girl, don't get me started. Do not get me started on all the books I have that I have not started reading yet.
Like, yo, it's like, all right, I need something that like is not going to sit on somebody's shelf. And that's just the ones that's behind me. I got a whole bookshelf that's full. Same. And that's why these are just sitting on the ledge, because there ain't no room on the bookshelf. So... Now, granted, some of them I have read some of or all of, like way back when, like in school or something. But nevertheless, I wanted something where it's like when you see it, like you're literally like, oh, this is it? Oh, okay. Like, let me go ahead and dive in.
Yes, that's the exact response. So not only did you target your audience, you knew what type of emotion and response.
Yes.
That was it.
Yes. So that is why I made sure it was short. Like literally it's about 45 pages, and not every page is like words, right? Mm-hmm. So you're literally going in, and I set it up to where you should be able from every chapter, be able to write down how you're going to apply that to your career. Like it's set up to where it's like, this is what you do. This is what you do. This is what you do. So you should be able to then say, how am I going to do it based on my situation? And the way I wanted it to be structured was for young professionals, when they read it, it allows them to not make the same mistakes that we made, right? Like the things that we wish we knew, they can know, and they can mitigate that coming out the gate.
Yes.
For those mid-level professionals that are not yet at that point where they understand what we have learned, they're able to take these concepts and say, okay, this is what's going to get me out of that rock and hard place that I feel like I'm in. One of the biggest flexes, and I tell my clients this all the time, the biggest flex is you being able to say, I don't have to stay here, right? I don't have to deal with this.
Right.
I don't have to deal with this. So I tell them that is my job. The moment you feel like you can say, I ain't got to deal with this, watch how I go get something else 10 times better, right? Because I don't care how competitive the job market is. I don't care how saturated the job market is. I got the blueprint, the playbook that's going to help position me. Come on. Help position me for this next opportunity. And one of the things that I mentioned in the playbook is how every role that you come into, you should already have a plan for what your next step is going to be. So you're never blindsided, whether that's internally or externally, having those triggers, right? If X, Y, and Z doesn't happen in 9 months or in 1 year, all right, this is what I'm going to activate in my plan, right? Or if it does happen, this is how the plan is going to change. Always having triggers. Your triggers can change, but you always want to have triggers. That's what's going to help early, mid, and even senior level professionals to set themselves up for negotiating, for not being stuck or feeling trapped. That's the whole premise behind being able to thrive, right? Getting paid what you deserve. Every job we have is going to always be something you don't like, right? So you go in and you leverage what you can, and at least go in with the flex of, if I'm in X, Y, and Z role and they start acting crazy and I don't like it, I'm out. Like, I'm out of here. I'm gone. And I've set myself up to be able to do that. And so that is part of the premise behind Thriving in Black. And so I'm so happy that y'all got it and that y'all like enjoyed it.
You gonna hand this over to her daughter as soon as she get home.
Slap it in the face.
Because we were literally, while we were on our little vacation, her daughter, you know, she's an intern and she's in there, like she's doing stuff. So we were already putting her on game. Like, okay, so you need to be doing. Look, I'm like, do your updates, quantify what you've been doing, make sure you're keeping, you know, putting that in writing. Like, we're giving her the game now. But like, I'll get people that refer young people who are either coming out of college or kind of at the phase where she's at. Or just starting their corporate career, and they'll just call, you know, and ask. And I'm like, okay, so congratulations. I'm proud of you. Great for, you know, now you're in here, but it's not going to be just like somebody, you do your job and then somebody's going to tell you what your next step is. It doesn't work like that. You have to plan your next step. You have to be the one to activate that plan. And I love the MVP, you know, like when you talk about creating an MVP, because it's like, you need to have a strategy towards, you know, what it's not rocket science. It's really addition. It's addition. It's an addition problem, right? You add these things together and then you will get the outcomes that you're looking for. And I'm the biggest person to be like, you know what? I ain't got to deal with this. I almost to a fault, because it's like, you know, once you start learning what you deserve and what your work, like your true value add that you didn't brought, because you need to look at that stuff yourself. You need to look at your own MVP and your own, you know, outputs and be like, I've been doing all this. And then you go try to lowball me on some numbers or some whatever, and you see the value that you're adding. It will give you that confidence to become, you know, move into those next phases. So I thought this was really, really good. A good idea on putting that out there in this form so people can just pick it up. All right. You got, this ain't a lot for you to have to try to do right now.
Really not. I mean, y'all scroll on TikTok, you can read this.
Listen,
you know,
at the same time you're gonna be on TikTok.
So let's talk about MVP, because most people think most valuable player. Let's kind of talk about what your MVP is and what that looks like without giving too much, because we want them to go get the book.
Right.
No, absolutely. I have no problem. So the MVP formula, I'm so glad you mentioned it, because I came up with it 2019, and the moment I decided to publish the book, I had actually reached out to my lawyer. Y'all, I've gotten that far, right? I have a lawyer now.
I love it. That's gold. I love it.
I had reached out to her. Shout out to her. She's a Black woman. She's killing. She's out in San Diego. Yes. So, oh yeah, when I tell you, like, I do not play. Like, where's all my Black people? Yes. All this Black X. I want it all around me. Okay.
Send us her info.
I got you. Because I refer her to everybody, the white folks, the Black folks, whoever. I don't care. I'll be like, get the business, sis. But because she definitely has been very instrumental in a lot of the way I navigate business at this phase of my career as a business owner. But with the MVP formula, came up with it back in like 2019. And that was when it like really changed the game, where it was like, all right, this is like the blueprint that I can apply to every client. This is when I use this formula, this is what worked for me to start getting interviews and offers and stuff like that. And so it stands for most valuable proposition, right? So you apply it to every responsibility you have. You apply it to your elevator pitch. You apply it to anything pertaining to your brand as a professional, right? Mm-hmm. The MVP formula positions you as the most valuable professional. right? It moves you from being simply an employee to becoming an asset. When you are an asset, you are somebody that minimizes risks for the company. You're somebody that contributes to the bottom line, that saves money on time, and it contributes to their revenue and all sorts of things. You improve processes. This is somebody who understands, even if I don't do it directly, I do it indirectly. And these are the ways I do it indirectly. And so that's how you position yourself as the most valuable professional, using the most valuable proposition formula.
I love it.
So an MVP, like when she was like, yo, you need to if you're going to publish that book, even though the book is going to be copywritten, you might want to copyright your formula.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I got you. So it's literally an actual formula, like a this plus this equals this, right? That you apply to literally, if you got a resume and you got, your job entry or your work history, and you have the different jobs and the bullets for your responsibilities, you could take that formula, apply it to every responsibility, and I answer phones now turns into, I mitigate problems for up to 100 plus customers a day, resulting in this department achieving X, Y, and Z KPI. Like, it turns into something way more profound and gives a different type of context to the work that you do. We oftentimes, as professionals, as Black professionals, we don't provide the right context for the work that we do. We feel like somebody should be able to tell, because I put on the top of my resume, I'm an HR professional, or I'm a DEI professional, I'm an engineer or a project manager. Like, they should know that I'm capable of doing X, Y, and Z jobs. Not necessarily. Not especially if they don't.
Exactly.
Yes.
The impact and the value that we bring to an organization.
That's a big learning point too, because I think, like, even for myself, I'll be like, I know I played small for too long. Like, I knew I was smart. I knew I was doing, I could do, I really felt like, especially coming in as a young professional, I'm like, I know what I got this. Like, I just really felt like I was killing it. And then when you go through these experiences where you weren't doing these things, because I feel like doing these things will help you kind of build their confidence along the way. When you're not doing it, and then you keep getting kind of beat up by the effects of not doing it, then you start getting imposter syndrome, and you start feeling like, well, maybe I'm not as smart as I thought I was, and maybe I'm not like as good because they didn't recognize it. Well, no, you need to make them recognize it and make them see, like, oh, well, hold on, but let me show you the receipts.
Correct.
Of what I've been doing,
But also knowing that if they don't recognize it, that is your trigger to say, I will
come
valued, right? And compensated. Because there have been times, yes, I played small, but I knew I was a smart person, but I was rated average, which I knew I was not average. And that was my trigger to say, okay, I can't make you see something you don't see. So let me go.
Yep.
That's always been a trigger of mine in the back of my head. I'm ready to pull it back. All right, I'm gone. Pop.
Because those performances, that's that performance review.
Yes.
If for nothing else, but for that performance review, you got to have that stuff down, because sometimes those will have you. I literally had somebody rate me. It was like, it was something crazy, but like I was so glad, because I had just been speaking to him via email, like, hey, is there anything that you're doing a great job, you're doing this, like, I'm asking for feedback, I'm working on self, and this is probably like 2 months prior. And then I went out on maternity leave, and when I was gone, I got a does not meet or something, and I was like, oh,
baby, that is a trigger. That is a trigger for me.
Yes. And so when I came back, I filed a complaint, because they tried not to give me my bonus because of that, and I was like, oh, no. I have them receipts together, and I filed a complaint with HR and everything, and they did that investigation and went and whatever they do in the behind the scenes and corrected all of that, because I'm like, well, if I wasn't meeting, you would be, when I asked you, you would have been telling me, that I'm not meeting. So just keeping those receipts together is so important.
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. That is why it's so important to track the work that you do. Actually, I think I have it in the book.
At the end, at the back of the book.
There is a matrix in here. We've already
I put the achievement tracker.
Page 45. And this is exactly what we were telling my daughter in the pool. Like, you need to be able to track your achievements and what you've accomplished, right?
So yes, everybody go get this book. It's called Thriving and Black, the Playbook, a practical guide for navigating predominantly white spaces to grow in your career.
With 5 plays.
Get it.
I love it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked, and we just, we love this conversation. We probably have to bring you back so we can talk more, because I really want to talk about some of the DEI stuff, but we'll get into that another day, because this is more about just you individually. What's something that you want people to leave this conversation with? Obviously, we want them to buy the book, and how can they give us your socials, and give us a little final call to action on what people should get out of this conversation with you today.
Absolutely. If nothing else, buy the book. No, seriously, outside of
that's a call to action. Buy the book.
Outside of that, though, seriously, outside of buying the book, though, I seriously want folks to realize, especially our Black women that are listening, watching from wherever they are, and that is not being where you want to be is 80% on us, right? And that is investing in ourselves, the actions that we're taking, right? 20% of it is the fact that we do have these systemic structures that are in place, right? And they play a heavy and a strong 20%. But because I've worked with so many professionals to date, one thing I do know is that we're not doing everything we can to show up as the best version of ourselves, to advocate for ourselves, right? So because we're not doing that, that is why 80% of the ownership is on us. Now, for those of us that are doing that, the ownership it shifts in terms of why you may not be where you want to be. But for those of you that are not where you want to be, it needs to be a self-inventory to really look and see, am I doing everything that I can to be, or not to be, excuse me, to position myself as the best version of myself that I can. And a lot of that comes with investing in ourselves, right? In some facet. You learn over time that white folks, that's what they do, right? That's one of the things that they do. They invest in themselves.
They really do.
They will invest in themselves. So don't just go run and get another degree, because Black women are one of the most over-degreed and underpaid professionals, period, right? Don't just go run and get another degree. Be very strategic and tactical about investing in yourself in various capacities. If that's a coach, if that's like therapy or counseling, figure out what it is that you need to do to invest in yourself. It may be a course on a skill set or something that you may need to improve on, but really take the time to look at, what do I need to do to invest in myself in order to position myself as the most valuable professional at the end of the day, right? That is the biggest call to action I can give someone, because depending on where you at will determine what the next action needs to be. Mm-hmm. But for everybody watching, everybody should do a self-assessment or a self-reflection to say, what do I need to do to show up as the most valuable professional, right? Yes. Exhaust all of my resources.
Love it. I'm taking notes.
Yes. And y'all can follow me on... You know your triggers. Yes, I love it. She's like, clink, clink. Triggers are big, though. Triggers, for me, that is one of the holy grails, man. Knowing your triggers, because with every action, there's a reaction. That's science, right? Yes. So if your employer takes a certain action or don't take a certain action, right, that's going to trigger something. So you've got to determine what that is. And it's all in the playbook. It's definitely in there. Even, what to do with performance evaluations, what to do if you get overlooked for a promotion, what that can mean for you, all that jazz. So definitely check it out. Follow me on LinkedIn if you want some spicy tea, right? Go find me on LinkedIn. Yes. That's where it gets hot and spicy. But you can also, and LinkedIn is just my name, DeAnnah Stinson Reese. And then, but you can follow me on Instagram, DS Reese 26, D as in dog, S as in Sam, Reese, REES as in Sam, E 26. And then from there, you'll see the business page is linked to my personal Instagram. And across all other platforms, I'm not gonna lie, y'all, I'm not really that active. So
I only can really focus on so many.
Exactly. You have your top top two.
Yeah, those are like the top two. But once you follow me on Instagram, you'll find the E3 page on Twitter. Like all the E3 handles are the same. E3 Pro SVCS, like the acronym for services. So, or the shorthand for services.
Love it.
So hire her. If you're a company and you're looking for someone to come in and create some strategy, and even with the, these ERGs and stuff, they need help. A lot of us are building new ones, at their company right now, and need some help with getting some strategy together, because you just be chasing your tail otherwise, not really accomplishing anything. So we're excited. We're so glad you joined us today. We have you as our April Bold Black Girl of the Month. We're super excited, and we can't wait to hear more about the 2.0.
Yes,
some new stuff coming up. So we'll have to bring you back and talk about that one.
Yes, I love it. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, DeAnnah. Thank you for being our
Bye, y'all. Thank you.
Bye.